This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Welcome to the James Bond Book Club. Hosted by me, John Bleasdale. Hello everybody and welcome to the James Bond Book Club. Today we are continuing our second season of the podcast as we go for the continuation novels that were written after Ian Fleming's death. Today we're going to be looking at James Bond, The Spy Who Loved Me, written by Christopher Wood. And joining me is the man who suggested the book, Chris Eales. Thank you for joining me, Chris.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And Chris and I sort of met via Instagram. His Instagram handle, if you wish to follow him, is at 007 Bookshelf. Is that correct, Chris?
Yep, that's it. That's where I post silly things about the books and James Bond in general.
Absolutely in my wheelhouse then. And so this was a book, I was just saying off mic prior to hitting record, that this was a book that I read as a kid when I was in the full flood of the movies. So I read it very much as a novelization prior to, and while I was reading novelizations of everything, I was too young to even think they were a different form of literature from literature or from any kind of book. So it was really interesting to revisit this, having read the Flemings all the way through and having reread the Flemings, and sort of discover this is actually a really good book. I think this might be the best continuation novel I've read so far.
Yes, I think it does have a very strong claim to being one of the best continuation novels, which is strange because it's also one of the most overlooked. It's never really come up on a lot of lists, and certainly whenever you get conversations about continuation novels, everyone mentions Colonel Sun, rightly, and then they jump straight to License Renewed. And this one came out in 1977 in a sort of desert period of Bond publishing, along with James Bond and Moonraker, which followed a couple of years later. I guess because they are novelizations of the films, they get overlooked, but there is a lot to say about it and a lot to champion about it as well.
Absolutely. And so let's talk a little bit about Christopher Woods first of all, because he is not only a novelist, he's a strange figure. I was sort of researching him this morning, and he's a sort of a literary novelist. He's written quite serious novels, and then he worked in advertising for a long time. And then his big sort of claim to fame, although he used a nom de plume for this, so I'm not sure he wanted to be famous for this, was his authoring of the Confessions novels and a series of sort of smutty, what he declared himself a lover of smut, screenplays and novels to do with this series and with several sort of follow-on series as well.
Yes, my only knowledge of the sort of Confessions series is of them as sort of 70s X-rated flea pit cinema fodder. You know, it's just smutty films that people went to see in the 70s. Very, very sort of soft sex porn sort of. I've never seen one, so I don't really know what their content is. I didn't even know that they were originally books until researching the writer. So it's a strange career path to have gone from advertising to smut paperback to then writing possibly one of the best continuation Bond films and the script as well. He wrote the script for The Spy Who Loved Me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe the script for Moonraker as well, perhaps.
Yes, I think he did have some involvement in that too.
I mean, I have for my sins, seen several of the Confessions films.
What are they like? What are they like?
Well, I would say more than porn. You'd have to be very, you'd have to have a certain kink for that to be your thing. But they're much more like a raunchier version of Carry On. You know, they're very,
Oh, okay.
they're very carry on in their humor. Robin Asquith is in them, and so that automatically
Okay.
minuses a rather large element of any sort of sexual stimulation you might be feeling while you're watching them. They do sort of feature, they do have this thing of featuring women who you kind of know from mid 80s or early 90s sort of sitcoms and soap operas in their earlier days, in earlier
Okay.
sort of. So that's kind of adds another level of fascination that there are actually quite a few jobbing British actors in them. And yesterday I had the pleasure of introducing a book on Don't Look Now in Venice. We were having an event, and one of the things was one of the sort of wiki facts about Don't Look Now was when it was released in the British box office, it was second only to Confessions of a Window Cleaner. So
Wow.
as much as we might look at something like Don't Look Now and think this is like the height of British cinema, commercially, the Confessions films were doing a lot better than many of these films that nowadays we consider to be, the absolute pinnacle.
Does that make it a slow year that year that the films were coming out and it happened to be a winner, or actually there's real artistic popularity in them? What's the
I just think they were enormously popular. I just think there was
really?
it's similar to the Carry On films, many of which don't really stand up to repeated viewing. There are a few there that I would go back to and watch and enjoy, but some of them are
Yes.
really calamitously bad. They're just sort of very obviously stitched together. But the Confessions films, likewise, I feel you would have real problems enjoying these days, what with attitudes changing, etc. But yeah, I don't know. I'm reminded of George Orwell writing about the art of the sort of the seaside postcard, that sort of
Yes. Well, that's a lot of the basis of all the Carry On films, and I guess, as you say, then if they're connected in that way to the Confessions films. And I seem to remember a lot of other sort of TV sitcoms that then got a movie made of them. And I seem to remember the On the Buses movie being a real, like, this is quite smutty for a TV show transferring to cinema. Tastes in the 70s are obviously leaning that way.
more permissive,
People enjoyed a bit of, yeah, people have enjoyed a bit more smut back then.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm all for it. Speaking of which, there's a little bit of smut in here. You have a pair of impertinent breasts at one point in the novelization. That got highlighted instantly.
Yes, this book is full of, well, smutty moments, but also like really strong violence and almost gore as well. It's quite ratcheted up the dial. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, said
No,
talking about that.
I think we should get into the book because I feel I think this is time. I think we've talked about Christopher Wood and his strange career enough. Although he went on and carried on writing screenplays into the 2000s and was had a successful career. But yes, The Spy Who Loved Me. I think the thing that I noticed, having not read this, it almost felt like the first time I'd read it, to tell you the truth, is that he is really writing, sorry, as Ian Fleming. This is a really accomplished pastiche of Fleming's voice.
Yes. The number of times that we've had recent books where it says the author writing as Fleming, and the claim, okay, it works occasionally, but generally the connection is tenuous at best. Whereas with this book, you can really feel it from the beginning. He's channeling Fleming's sort of style. And as I just said, even though it's ratcheted right up to 10 and beyond in some cases, generally the the style of writing really is Fleming, and it really has caught whatever magic he had in his original books.
And James Bond in this book is Fleming's James Bond, not Roger Moore's. I was reading this and just almost completely forgetting the film. It was almost like it came almost sometimes as a jolt when it was like the Union Jack parachute opens, and you're sort of thinking that's kind of weird because that doesn't quite belong in this book. I can see the part in the film that you're referring to, but the James Bond that I've just been introduced to, this seems like an unnecessary or something just he wouldn't do.
Yes, it's certainly when I was reading it, I didn't have Roger Moore, wonderful as he is, in my mind. And I don't know if whenever you read a Bond film, do you have an image in your head of what Bond looks like or who he could be? Whenever I do, I know this sounds slightly ridiculous, but the old Daily Express cartoon series,
I was going to say exactly the same thing.
That's who I get in my mind whenever I read a Fleming book and whenever I read other versions, it goes to that sort of image of him. I never have Connery or Moore or any of the actors. It's a bit weird, but it kind of fits because then you can project onto him so many other tropes that the writer has created. And that's who I had in my mind when I was reading this book.
Yeah, I mean, physically, the only thing that that Fleming has kind of given you is the forelock that sort of bobs down, the unruly forelock that he keeps having to sweep back, which sort of represents, I don't know, an anarchic part of his character, and a sort of cruelty to his features, which is just such a non-physical thing to say about anybody that it's just like, well, what am I supposed to do with that? You know,
what is that?
What is a cruel mouth? I've never seen one, you know. He's got fangs.
When I see a cruel mouth, I'll let you know.
Take a picture and send it me, please.
Will do. Yeah, I mean, as you say, there's the hair, there's the scar down the left cheek, but yeah, apart from that, the description is very vague. And I guess that allows every reader to project however they want. It's not so specific that you've got to be, oh, right, that's what he looks like. There is a gray area that we can all invent or maybe even project ourselves into that character if one wished to. But yes, reading it from the start, this is not Roger Moore's Bond. This is another version of Bond, and it is cruel and dark.
Exactly. I think it's the attitude, it's the internal monologues that you get, or the internal the being privy to his thought processes, and they're nothing like Roger Moore, unless Roger Moore is a real sociopath and is completely disconnected between his sort of suave exterior. Because there's a bit where he's sort of, again, at the very beginning, he's kind of thinking, oh, this woman's a bit of a slut, if you excuse the expression. But that's the expression that he uses. And you're thinking, Roger Moore he wouldn't have that word in his internal vocabulary. It would be too tasteless for him.
Yeah, it's a lady, and the lady needs to...
a loose lady, perhaps, but nevertheless a lady.
Yes. It's Fleming's Bond, certainly, especially in sort of the first... Just jumping a couple of chapters ahead, when it's the description of how he gets from Chamonix up to the chalet at the top of the mountain. And there's this description that Bond loses at the casino. You know, this is a man who gambles and is not always a winner. He does lose, and he's lost all his money at the roulette wheel. Trying to find the quote, but I can't. Never mind.
It feels a little
Bond
bit like Casino
when
Royale.
He's suffering.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like going back to the beginning, as all James Bond books and films and reinventions always tend to sort of trace it back to the very start. And it is a sleazier world, because even when you have the Russian major, who will be the spy who loves him.
Yeah.
Is it Major Anya?
Anya Masova.
Yeah, Anya Masova. She has an encounter with her sort of boss, which is immediately really sleazy, and she manages to sort of extricate herself from.
Oh yes, the message that he's turned off the audio speaker and sort of plants a hand on her, which is very reminiscent of Rosa Klebb in From Russia with Love, trying to seduce Tanya Romanova, and she manages to get away with it by saying, "Oh no, I know there's another recording device in your office." But he is a constant presence in the book, leering at her and wanting to consume her. It's quite frightful.
And there's quite a lot of sort of body disgust as well, because she sort of notices that he's got an adhesive to his holding his wig on and things like that. There's this real sort of like how
Yeah.
grotty this man is. Whereas if you watch the film, he's this avuncular character who, it's not, he's okay. You don't get that feeling necessarily.
Yes, although that is one of the many changes that this book makes with the film. In the film, it's General Gogol
That's
who
right.
becomes a sort of repeating character throughout the Roger Moore films, and much loved as well, despite only having a small part to play in the whole series. But the book, it is, oh, I can't remember his name.
It's like pinching or
Nick Nitkin.
yeah.
Basically, he's the character from Russia with Love, head of Smersh, and he has been dropped into this book, which again, sort of trying to cement that sort of connection to the Fleming Bond and this version of Bond, which I think works really well. I think it's a great choice.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that he was actually a pre-existing character. Oh, that's really interesting.
Yes,
I mean,
General
talking
Nitkin.
right, right. Talking about those differences, I had the pleasure of interviewing Alan Dean Foster, who I think we can all bow our heads in recognition as one of the masters of the novelization. And he was very pragmatic about how he does a novelization. He plops the draft of the script in front of him on the sort of music stand and starts typing and starts transferring it to a prose style and adding some description via onset photographs of models and whatever he has, and sort of builds it up like that. But he doesn't really diverge from the story. He doesn't do too much that will maybe cause the franchise problems if it's a franchise later on, because you've given this
Yeah.
information. And it's whereas in here there's a lot of material which is either totally different from the film or is very much extra. And I think one of the most striking examples of this, and one of the reasons that I think anyone who's a fan of the film should read this book, but anyone who's a fan of Bond generally should read this book, even if you don't like the film. I think it's well worth reading. Is the backstory for Jaws, which, going back to what you just said about
Yes.
From Russia with Love, is also felt very much like the backstory of Red Grand.
Yes, definitely. In all of the novelizations that I've read, certainly the Raymond Benson books, they give the villain a little bit more of a backstory. So the Tomorrow Never Dies novelization, Elliot Carver is given, oh, how he rose to power. And in this, Stromberg is given that backstory as well. And it's sort of, okay, that's interesting. But the really interesting one, as you say, is Jaws's backstory and how he got to where he is. And it is, again, leaning into the darker aspects and the slightly gorier undertone of the whole book that makes it. I almost think the film version of The Spy Who Loved Me is the family friendly version. The book version of The Spy Who Loved Me is very much adult, X rated, sort of, you do not want your kids reading this book. But for Jaws, yeah, how he gets to where he is this huge muscle man, and then having his jaw completely shattered by police in a prison cell and then escaping. And then, oh heavens, I can't remember the name of the doctor, but an ex-Nazi doctor who experimented on humans and animals is then employed to graft this metal jaw. Even just the description of that, it's like we don't need, it's an excess. We don't need the description of this Nazi doctor who put an Alsatian's head on a human body and it made it live for 2 weeks or something. It's like we don't need that as a. It's it's tantalizing, but it's just excessive. You know what I mean?
There's a certain obscenity to the excess. It goes there, and I think you're absolutely right. Also, though, I love because I think the Bond books, the Fleming Bond books, were always, despite being Cold War books, also very much in the shadow of the Second World War. So I think anything that connects Bond to the Second World War is often a good thing.
Yes, this book is not Second World War. This is very much Cold War,
Mm.
but with, I guess, is there echoes of Second World War? Maybe because of Schmerz being involved, and that's very much a apparatus from an earlier time. But it is being brought very up to date. And I'd say it is a modern version of Bond for the 70s, modern that is.
To go back to what you were saying about some of the differences in terms of like it being an X-rated, version of the film, if you like, or complete. I think the film is very much like a caper, and one of the things about the Roger Moore films, especially The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker, is he's not really that much of a spy. He sort of kind of accidentally, blunders into various sort of situations and even in the Fleming books, there is an element in which he kind of his. We said this in sort of season one of the podcast that his superpower is almost a superhuman amount of luck because in terms of his
Yes.
skill set as a spy, he's constantly being followed. I think this happens in this book as well. He's constantly being followed and thinking, why would anybody follow me? That doesn't make any sense. And it's like, well, you're a
I'm just a
spy.
regular I'm just a regular government worker going about my business. Why
I'm
would why would anyone want to kill me?
I work for Universal Export. Why, who's interested in that? That
Well,
body.
that was one of the changes I'd noticed. They've
Yes.
changed. Universal Export is now International Export in the book. Although, just to get really pedantic, then towards the back of the book, I've got all my notes. It then changes to Universal Export. It's a weird sort of, why have you set up as a different organization to then go back to? So I wonder if that was a typo or a mistake that made it through the editors and the reviewers.
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
knows?
The original, but in this book, except for that blunder that he makes in terms of Universal International Export, it reminds me of what you only live twice when he accepts a drink which is stirred, not shaken,
Yes.
much to the fury of fans. There's a sense that James Bond is actually a really good spy in this. He's really good at sort of fighting, and he knows how to, there's an almost Reacher-esque ability to kill people.
Yes. He is a lethal killing machine in this. I didn't count the number of corpses that pile up through the course of the book, but it's a lot. A lot of people die. As you said before, with the whole how he gets to the chalet and how he loses at the casino earlier. When he's on his way to the chalet at the very beginning, he's cursing himself for forgetting to bring his gun with him, which is a fairly big mistake to make, even if you do think, oh, maybe the woman isn't just out to get me and she does just want a good time. A secret agent should never go without his gun. But besides that, he still manages to fight his way out and get to the parachute jump. But even then, when we get to Egypt, he's in his hotel room and he does his checks of, has anyone been snooping in my hotel room? He goes to meet the lady and uses her as a human shield, and then chases after the other assassin. And there was a line, sort of he had a great respect for the man who was trying to kill him because he was still trying to reach for his gun to finish the job, even though knew he was probably about to die himself. And there's a real urgency to that sort of spy work and the spy craft about the book.
Absolutely. And when it is revealed that he's the man who killed Anya's lover, he says, "Oh, come on, you know what the game is, you know what the rules are." He would have understood this, so you should understand. I'm sorry he's your lover, but it was him or me, and those are the rules.
Yeah, this is the business that we're in, which actually transfers fairly directly from the film. The way they find out, the way that Anya finds out is different, but the end result conversation is the same. These are the stakes that we're playing for. You should understand this is the game.
The scene that we've already alluded to, that there's quite a lot of violence and gore that you're not expecting from a Bond book. And the John Gardner books, if he's influenced by Christopher Wood, I think here the influence is definite. Now, you could definitely see a thing he's taken. Would be the gore, would be the violence, would be the amping up to the 1980s. So for instance, when he shoots the assailant with his ski stick, in the film, that's done as like, oh, he's using, he's got shooty ski sticks and it's just a bit of gadget. But in the book, it's like, no, that's actually for grappling irons. That's actually for climbing. And
Yeah.
he's just improvising because he, as you said, he hasn't got his gun. But the real scene of violence, I don't know about you, but when the Stromberg kills his secretary, by dropping her into the
Oh,
shark tank. I mean, that's like Peter Benchley's Jaws. That's or even worse.
yeah. That whole chapter, Room 4C, and the way that, for an instant, the shark's head filled the camera, and it was possible to see the triangular saw teeth grinding their way through the white bone, the terrifying glint of incontestable purpose in the small, evil eye. The leg came away from the body and dropped slowly to the floor of the tank, leaving a corkscrew spiral of blood. There's more, but I'm not going to go further into it. But that's enough to give you it's grim. It's really grim. And then actually, as a return to that later in the book, when Bond visits Stromberg, he's looking into the one of the tank with the giant tanks, and he sees on the floor of the tank some little crab or octopus is pulling something along, and it's her hand with a
Yeah.
watch or a ring or something on it. It's like it's really gritty and gnarly. I don't know why, but I kind of liked it in the book, but it's still, ooh, yeah, it was it was a good little detail and a good little callback, but it was still grim.
Oh yeah, it is nasty, but I totally it gives that real sense of danger, and I do think The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker, both of the films, as well as these novelizations, do have a sort of undercurrent of danger that the other Roger Moores don't have. I felt even in the films the threat of sort of being eaten by sharks that Stromberg presents and the threat of being killed by Jaws was, as a kid watching those films, was terrifying.
Yes, yes, definitely. Certainly, in the film, when the secretary is killed, you see the shark coming and the screams, and then, the camera moves away. You don't actually see it. And again, as you say, with Moonraker, in the film, Corinne, the secretary, when she's chased down by the dogs
Oh
and killed.
yes, that's like something out of The Omen.
Horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really dark and horrible, but it's a Bond film, so it's going to be light and family friendly and fun. It's like, no, you could take that scene out of that film, and as you say, put it into The Omen or put it into another sort of 70s horror, and it would be scary. It would be really scary.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I forgot about that dog scene. That's so. Yeah, every time I think of Moonraker, I think of the sort of the double take pigeon and sort of Dr. Goodhead. A woman?
Oh, a woman, a woman.
That was the comedy, that it was a woman and a doctor? No, this doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. You're having me on. Um,
You're a lady. Come on. Come and have a drink.
as we go on, I think one of the things that's always interesting for me with these with thrillers generally, I remember Eddie Izzard talking once about how difficult it is to write car chases in books because they're so cinematic. So, like a book, how are you going to, in any way, sort of express a car chase in a way that is similar, will get the same result as a film. Here we have, the car chase with the helicopters, and it's done really well. He manages to describe action in a really exciting way, which doesn't hold up plot either. It gets on with it. It's very pacey.
Yes, yes, it's another one of the changes. It's now a red lotus as opposed to a white lotus. Why, I don't know, but there it is. But it is a really good scene. They zip along this mountain road, and yes, it's lifted almost exactly from the film. But as you say, it's got pace and it's got urgency to it. Then when the helicopter turns up, they've dispensed with the glamorous assistant getting shot and it's Jaws in the helicopter. But yeah, there's still adventure and thrills to it and it moves along. It's one of those things of because you've seen the film, you know what's coming in the book. So maybe as you read it, you can't help but have some of those images flash up in your mind. But it's not as if the book lags or makes those images slow down at all. It still has pace and it's still exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have those sort of comedy payoffs. I guess
No,
there's no sort of him sort of dropping a fish out of the window as they come back on the beach, or earlier on he doesn't turn up as sort of Lawrence of Arabia the way he does in the film, which always makes me absolutely cringe when that happens in the
yes,
movie, because I just think, oh, it's just one of those sight gags that has no place in a film that wants to take itself seriously in any way whatsoever.
certainly. I think that's one of the main ways you could say, as I said earlier, the film is the family-friendly version of this story, and the book is the more adult version. It strips away any of the comedy quips, and it is just bare, raw emotion like that. If someone dies, they die. There is no humorous anecdote afterwards to lighten the mood. They're dead. Move on with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's entrails in this book on several
Oh,
occasions. There's several
yeah.
people get their entrails, and there's a smell of death. There's a bit towards the end with the final battle where Bond notes the smell of multiple bodies, and he's already, which is something again, even the battle at the end of The Spy Who Loved Me, the film is bloodless.
We are jumping around the book completely in this, but I guess there's no problem with that. Yeah, the commander of the British submarine, when he makes his attack on the control room, gets set on fire. And as you say, the smell of burning flesh, I think he describes it as like pork or something. There's that sort of similarity. And it's just, again, it's cringy, but the description is real and tangible. Like you could smell that and be like, oh God, is that what burning human flesh smells like? I remember in a John Gardner book, I want to say Death is Forever, when they get electrocuted, someone gets electrocuted in a tunnel, and the smell slowly rises through the tunnel towards Bond, and he smells that burnt pig smell and promptly throws up. And it's just there. Maybe that is how it is. Maybe that's what burning human remains smell like.
I haven't. I mean, I guess I'm going to have to, do some experiments over the weekend to find out. I can't. I don't want to talk from a.
Hang on. What are you proposing?
I don't want to talk from a position of ignorance, do I? This is where you realize that this whole podcast has been a cover for my sociopathic tendencies. Yeah, I mean, we are. You're quite right. We are jumping around the book quite liberally, but I almost feel like this book allows it because it itself hops from thing to thing and from set piece to set piece. And I think towards the end, it maybe suffers a little from that, because in a movie you can sort of cut and you're over there, but in a book it's sort of like, well, how long did it? It talks about them sort of, making record time through Gibraltar to get back into the Mediterranean and you're sort of thinking it's going to take you a couple of days. You're not going to be there in hours.
Yeah. That that was something that I had umbrage with in the movie. When you're looking at that globe and you see one of the submarines is on the far side of the Atlantic and the other one is on one side of the Atlantic, and they are, I don't know where the ship is, the oil tanker, and then, yes, then they've got to get into the Mediterranean again from there. How fast are these objects moving? It's not possible. It's just not possible.
It strikes me that all fiction secretly has a Star Trek transporter room somewhere to just get the characters where they need to be. We need a denouement, and we can't say, like SpongeBob, 2 weeks later, there they are.
Hey, got to respect SpongeBob for adhering to the space-time continuum.
We've got to respect SpongeBob for many things, but that is included. What do you think of Stromberg? Because we've talked about Jaws a little bit, and Stromberg also feels like a nastier character than he is in the film, and also kind of he's, to me, I always feel Ian Fleming's baddies, Blofeld included, can sometimes be a little bit, just very pantomimey and very sort of like, "You'll never get me, Bond, ha ha ha," Stromberg's feels a little bit more complicated than that.
Yes, certainly this Stromberg is more rounded and more fleshed out, even though it is sort of this pale, slightly wet flesh that he seems to have been made of. It is good. It does lean rather heavily on the Bond villain idea that they have to have a disfigurement or some
Mm,
sort of there's something physically wrong with them that then you can attach evil to, which I think is a very lazy bit of
yeah.
writing. Evil can appear in all forms. Um,
I didn't like that
the
in the
fact,
Casino Royale film, the Mads Mikkelsen weeping a tear of blood. And it's just like, it happens once and he says, "Oh, it's nothing
yeah,
sinister." And it's like, but
it's like,
why have that at all?
yeah, it's really pointless. It would be better to not have that at all and him just be this evil villain. It
Mm,
makes it far more believable. He doesn't need a physical deformity. Certainly in the book, he is loaded with physical deformity. He's this sort of very pale-skinned, red-eyed, almost albino, I guess,
mm,
sort of character with these small, wet lips, but vast intelligence. It was very interesting how they allude to the fact that he killed his step parents
mm.
or his adoptive parents, one might say, and then how he took over the family funeral home company and then turned it into a big empire and made his fortune stealing from the dead corpses that were being cremated. Interesting that he then makes the leap. People that run the world are not elected officials or royalty, but criminals. So he must become a criminal to take more power. Did I miss the point of why does he want more power? Is he just power hungry, or he is a greedy person in himself? I'm not sure. But yes, how he then has his rise through the criminal underworld and killing off uh all of his adversaries to take the top spot. It was very interesting. I can't see any sort of allusion to any other sort of character that we've had in the past or from wider fiction as well. He does seem to be his own original creation, which is interesting.
Yeah, there's maybe a sort of Captain Nemo, man from Atlantis, just in the aquatic sort of, and the webbing of the fingers reminds me of what's the name of the actor from Dallas, who Bobby Ewing from Dallas was the man from Atlantis originally. Um,
Yes,
I
God,
can't remember his actual name.
yeah.
But anyway, he was it had that just in the sense of the rather naff deformity of the webbed fingers. It was just like, okay, that's fine, I guess.
It's
Um,
just hinted at, and then it's moved like Mads Mikkelsen's bleeding eye. It's hinted at, or it's put there, but then nothing's really made of it.
yeah, it's
We
not like
move
he
on.
jumps in and
It's a
swims really
pointless.
quickly or anything like that. Suddenly you go,
Yeah,
oh my God, the man's half fish.
yeah. It's was why? Okay, yes, that explains his obsession with the ocean, but we get the obsession with the ocean anyway from all of his fish tanks that he's had when he was a young child and his obsession with water. So we've got it. We don't need webbing. The deformity of Jaws, having this metal jaw and then that being his main mode of killing as an assassin, makes sense. It's being used, it's returned to. That's his main reason for being a threat. I get that. But yeah, in these other cases, it is just a bit wet, I guess.
I see what you did there. Patrick Duffy was the man from Atlantis, by the way.
Ah, there we go.
And yeah, I do love the fact that he adopts, himself being a child of adoption, he adopts Jaws because he's ugly. He's like, he values, he's got that inverted sort of value system. One other thing that I would say about Stromberg as a sort of villain is Christopher Wood seems to have like a certain, I mean, in a sense, he creates the template for lots of Bond villains to come, in that it's a mad person who wants world destruction. So you have,
Yes.
I'm going to provoke a nuclear war and survive it, and that's essentially the exact same mission as Hugo Drax in Moonraker, which is also Christopher Wood is writing. And it's interesting that when he's confronted about this, as in, why on earth do you need to, why can't you just live under the sea anyway? Why do you need to kill everybody? It's it feels kind of thinly motivated, I mean, he's not some sort of outraged moralist, but all of a sudden he becomes one. It's sort of like, oh, people are terrible, you need to get rid of them and start again. It's like,
Yeah.
well, you're terrible. I'm not sure how terrible people are. Drax has more of a sort of Nazi scientist, sort of Aryan project about him. So that is, in a sense, it's almost like he's refined that idea of what the villain wants.
Yes. Drax has the distinction, I would say, though, of wanting balance and harmony in nature. That he makes this claim of, the world is being destroyed by humanity. I'm going to destroy humanity and start again. That's why he creates that thing, the poison that only kills humans. It doesn't affect any other form of animal or any other part of nature. Whereas with Stromberg, he wants a nuclear war so he can wipe the slate clean and then stay safely under the water. As you say, just go under the water anyway. Don't worry about the rest of us.
No, but you'll be bothered by James Cameron in about 20 years. But
Yeah.
you've got.
Don't worry, he's harmless generally.
He's fine. Yeah, he's cuddly. He's okay. Yeah, I mean, it's true. I never got a sense of how many people he had under the water and who was in who else was part of this plan. Whereas again, with Drax, there's an idea. He's got a program. He's going to repopulate the Earth, and he's got this sort of almost like a Mooney style cult of people who've been pre-programmed to want this, have somehow been brainwashed into thinking this is a good idea.
Yes. This is a big flaw, I would say, in the plotting. I guess, on the one hand, I guess we don't need to know, but on the other hand, it would be interesting to find out, because certainly when we're on board the oil tanker and Stromberg's army of men who are carrying out this plan, who end up having this huge battle with, are they all going to be going underwater? One could assume so. So Stromberg's going into his underwater base with all of these men who are on the oil tanker. I'm assuming there's got to be a fair old amount of women as well if he's trying to repopulate. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit of a gay party down there.
I just get the feeling he hasn't thought this through.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like, no, okay, now I see a few problems in my plan. Now I'm beginning to regret what I've done.
No wonder he wanted to take Triple X back with him. Hang on, we need a woman. Quick, grab her.
I mean, this is also one of the things that I think Austin Powers does very well when Dr. Evil is reanimated and sort of asks for £1 million and everybody falls about laughing, is there is this kind of inflation in the movies of what we can have at the end of a film. So it has to be big explosions and the ending has to be somehow apocalyptic. And that wasn't true of the first Bond books, or even the later Bond books, actually. Often Bond was doing something very low stakes. He was just getting one code machine or getting one, and you could say, oh yes, but the balance of power hangs on such small items. But it wasn't like, it was, I mean, Thunderball, there was the risk of a nuclear explosion. But by the time you get to the 70s, and then almost endlessly from that point on, it seems to be the end of the world as we know it.
Yes. Prior to this, we had the man with the golden gun, and he was after the energy device that had been invented and Scaramanga had stolen, which is a kind of a secondary subplot to the main Bond Scaramanga fight.
Mm.
It's relatively low stakes, one might say. And again, with Live and Let Die, there's the Mr. Big wants to flood the world with his heroin so he can take over the drugs market. Again, it's obviously it's big, but it's not apocalyptic. You're right, I guess. This is the start of raising the stakes. Maybe, I guess the only comparison in the earlier films would be You Only Live Twice, which this film is a bit of a rip-off of.
Yeah, capturing the submarines, capturing the
Spacecraft.
Yeah.
And then wanting to start a world war so that a third party can then survive it and take over. Yeah, that similarity is well known. But yeah, other than that, this is the beginning of big Bond danger. A return to smaller stakes would be good, I think. And we've certainly had that. Casino Royale was a smaller stakes sort of plot. Skyfall was as well.
Quantum of Solace just didn't have a plot. I'm a really big fan of Quantum of Solace. I defend that film. It's a little punk movie of a Bond film. It's like 90
it's scrappy.
minutes. Yeah, exactly. It's 90 minutes. It's obviously ripping off Bourne as much as it possibly can. It's got a brilliant song. So
hugely underrated song. I think it's
marvelous song. So I'm really up for that. But you can tell they didn't have a structure. It's one of those films that you get halfway through, and even if you know nothing about it, you go, "Was there a writer's strike on when this was made?" And surely enough, there was.
Yes, there was.
And you can tell. You can absolutely tell 100%. So, a couple of questions before we finish today. Number one would be, I haven't reread Moonraker by Christopher Wood, so I think that must go on my list, right?
Yes. It's certainly worth it as a follow-up. I started it, and again, it follows this book's lead of just being a little bit grittier and a little bit harder. You get the description. It starts as the film does with the hijacking of the Moonraker on the back of the 747, and you just get a little bit of insight into the pilots who fly that plane, what they're doing, what they're going to be doing in London, and someone's going to meet his mistress and give her a good seeing to, and you're like, yeah, I don't need to know that. Move on. But it is worth a read. Again, I remember there's a description when they're in the space station, part of the laser fight, the ridiculous laser fight, and Bond sees a spaceman sort of shot and then fly off into outer space, and he's describing the horror of just being lost in the eternal void. And you just, for a moment, you're like, bloody hell, yeah, that is horrifying. And you see that in the film, but you don't have time to think about it because you're on to the next little bit of action and the next little bit of action. But there are spacemen flung out into the cosmos, injured, and never to be seen again. And it is dark and horrifying.
Yeah, no,
Weird. Anyway,
I'll have a revisit of that, because again, I've definitely read it as a kid. I've definitely read it in my first flush of Bond mania, from way too early, way too young to today, with a big pause from the ages of, I guess, 18 to 35 or something, where I didn't, where I was sort of like, in the words of St. Paul, put away childish things, only to realize actually the childish things were the best stuff, and I want to get it out again. I also wanted to ask you, what other continuation authors do you prize? Which other ones are you do you think stand up to Christopher Wood and Fleming?
I definitely say Colonel Sun
Mm,
is possibly the high watermark. That
mm,
one is just absolutely brilliant, and I've reread that several times. Yeah, and then beyond that, Raymond Benson does very good job in High Time to Kill, and Zero Minus Ten as well. He's done some cracking continuation books. As for the Gardeners, I do like the John Gardner books, but they are such a mixed bag, and there
mm.
are like a really high watermark, I'd say, would be Icebreaker.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've got that on my list. So I might be
It's
doing that
really
again
good,
with Dr. Brian Baker might be coming on to talk about that. So,
marvelous. That
oh,
is a really really good uh, Cold War thriller. But the book immediately before it, I think, for Special Services, is an absolute hot mess of a book.
oh, really?
Oh yeah,
Now you had me interested. Now you've got me really curious.
it's Bond gets involved with Felix Leiter's daughter, which is weird that
Right.
you'd think Felix would be okay with that. But then they go off to America to fight the bad guy, and there's something about mind control ice cream.
Hmm. Right.
It just gets weirder and weirder. But it is a good book. It's a fun pulp read, but it's
Right.
just really odd. And then Gardner goes off into his later books, and they just start to sort of regurgitate the same sort of neo-Nazi themes. And then there are a couple of them that get very, very complicated. I think The Man from Barbarossa, it's overly complex spy
Hmm.
thriller.
Hmm.
So there's a wide variety.
Hmm.
I think you just pick and choose as you would a buffet.
Yeah,
Don't stick to one thing, just bit of this, bit of that, and enjoy.
You've intrigued me. I'm definitely Icebreaker is definitely on the list. We're definitely going to do Solo and Devil May Care, the Sebastian Fawkes film, Sebastian Fawkes book. I would definitely. Somebody has suggested to me the Miss Moneypenny Diaries as a really interesting read. So.
Those I've never touched, and I must try them at some point because other
Mm.
people have said, "Oh yeah, they are surprisingly good."
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going. Charlie Higson's Young Bombed. I've actually read, I think, Silverfin. I think the first one. So I might be interested in talking about that to somebody. But yeah, it's interesting. There are just too many. I can't do all of them, but I would
Yeah,
like to sort of have a dab at some. And I'd kind of like also, hopefully, in the next few months, to perhaps maybe do a non-Bond but influenced by Bond book, such as Robert Ludlum's Bourne Supremacy, or even John le Carre as a sort of like the anti-Bond and sort of compare and contrast.
that would be
Uh,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, sort of seeing it from a Bond perspective, but also broadening out into the world of sort of thrillers and other literary, even other literary genres as goes.
Certainly, as if I can suggest, I
Mm,
actually got my copy here. James Bond After Fleming,
right.
which is
Okay.
a book all about the continuation novels by
Oh.
Mark Edlitz, and it is fascinating. He's listed out every single one of the books and sort of a quick description of their plots. It mentions, are there scrambled eggs or not? Yes, there are.
Perfect.
Which
Yes.
actually we didn't.
No, and they spied
There
off
are.
me very right at the beginning.
Where is it? I made the note, page 50, scrambled eggs in the hotel.
There you go. There you go. Perfect.
So yeah, so at least Christopher Wood is adhering to the Fleming in that regard. We're getting our eggs, and I do remember, um, oh, the captain of the American submarine. He has a warm, dry handshake, which is
Mm.
another one of those Fleming tropes. If he has a firm, dry handshake, why would someone have a wet handshake? I don't know, but it's
Wet,
just
wet, flimsy
yeah.
handshake.
You're gonna shake it or kiss it? What's going on?
Did you lick this hand before
Yeah.
you shaking it? Terrible person. What are you doing? Shaking my hand like that with that thing. How very much dare you? Uh, absolutely brilliant. Well, let's let's put. I'd love to have you back on. Maybe you could help me through one of the Raymond Bensons, because those I have. I'm a Benson virgin, so.
Ooh,
Um, and also kind of interesting because Benson's an American coming to it, and I'm always quite interested by the American view of Bond being so British, but at the same time, you have the Richard Meinbaum and as the screenwriter for many of the Bonds. So yeah, that might be an interesting if you up for a revisit.
that would be delightful. Thank you. Yes.
Chris, thank you so much for joining me. And your work is people can follow you on Instagram at 007 Bookshelf.
Yes. Yes. Lots of fun and frivolity on there on Instagram.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.